Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Dov, for the setup over here. Parsha Yitro is page 394. Okay? So this is the Parsha of Matan Torah, of the Sinai experience, of the giving of the Torah. And very interestingly, the name of the Parsha is Yitro, Jethro. Who was Yitro? So let's hear who Yitro was, and then we'll have a little bit of background, and then I'll share something, a beautiful teaching that I heard from Rav Shalom Shwadron of blessed memory. Rav Shalom Shwadron is known as the Maggid of Yerushalayim. If you've ever seen the series of books of the Maggid Speaks, right? It all started with Rav Shalom Shwadron. He's a wonderful, wonderful tzaddik speaker who lived in Yerushalayim, and he was a Maggid, meaning he would go from neighborhood to neighborhood giving inspiring and motivating and penetrating talks on Torah. So let's begin. Vayishma Yitro. Marta, why don't you lead off for us in Hebrew?
Vayishma Yitro, Kohen Midyan, Choten Moshe el kol asher asa Elokim leMoshe leYisrael, Ami ki hotzi Hashem et Yisrael miMitzrayim.
Good. In English, please, somebody. Hi, Rivka.
Jethro, the minister of Midian, father-in-law of Moshe, heard everything that God did to Moshe and to Israel, his people, that Hashem had taken Israel out of Egypt.
Go a little further, Jethro.
Jethro, the father-in-law, Moshe, took Zipporah, the wife of Moshe, after she had been sent away, and her two sons, of whom the names of one was Gershon, and for he had said, I was a sojourner in a strange land. And the name of the other was Eliezer, for the God of my father came to my aid, and he saved me from the sword of Pharaoh.
Okay. So Yitro is now hearing about all the miracles that God had done, and there are debates amongst the sages. Was he coming before the giving of the Torah, after the giving of the Torah? But he's coming clearly after the exodus from Egypt and the plagues and the splitting of the sea and the war against Amalek. And he comes to join up with the Jewish people. Now, what is some of the background on Yitro? So all we know about Yitro is him coming now. We know about Yitro earlier on when Moshe fled from Egypt after he had killed the Egyptian who was mercilessly beating the Jew, and he had to flee for his life. He came to the well of water, and he had to draw water, help these women draw water, and they were the daughters of Yitro, and he stayed there and ended up marrying Tzipporah, Yitro's daughter. That's what the Torah tells us about Yitro. Now, why did he need to help these girls with the drawing of the water?
Because the shepherds wouldn't let them.
The shepherds wouldn't let the daughters take any of the water. Why? Because Yitro had been excommunicated. Why? Because he had been the Kohen Midian. Kohen is like the high priest of Midian, but he rejected all of that idolatry. We say that Yitro actually had worshipped all forms of idolatry, found it empty, and rejected that. They were not too happy that their grand poobah had rejected all that they believed in. He was excommunicated. But it goes back earlier than that. The Medrash tells us that Paro, when he wanted to know what to do with the Jews in Egypt, he called in 3 advisors. He called in Yitro, he called in Bilam, and he called in Eov. Eov is Job. Bilam said, the Jews, kill them out. You worried about them? Kill them out. Eov was silent. Yitro spoke out on behalf of the Jews. Now, look what happens to Yitro after that. Right? Paro did not want to hear that, and he was banished. He was sent out from Egypt. So here you have the person who is defending the Jews, helping out God's children, and what happens to him? He gets banished. He gets sent out from Egypt. And then it goes worse. The more he continues on his journey towards recognizing God, the worse it gets. The worse it gets. He was a man who had the most prominent position. And what happens now? He's excommunicated. His daughters can't get water from the well. This is what's going on. And I'm sorry, it wasn't from Shlomo Shlomo I heard this from. It was from Rav Yaakov Galinsky. That's who I heard this from. Rav Yaakov Galinsky was another great speaker and great Maggid. So he explains that invariably, when we look at life, we expect in life that whoever does good gets paid back right away. Right? You do good, God takes care of you. You do bad, you have to suffer the consequences.
Not right away.
Not right away. Right? He said we live in a microwave generation. We want to pop it into the microwave, and 45 seconds later we want to take it out, piping hot, everything perfect. Right? And this world is not a world. This is not a microwave world. That's not how things work. And he said, he quoted from a Gemara very beautifully. The Gemara tells a story. The Gemara brings the pasuk which says, well, it brings the concept, Haba l'taher mesayin oto, haba l'tameh potchin lo. The person wants to become tahor, wants to become pure, wants to improve. He gets helped. He or she gets helped. Haba l'tameh, a person wants to become tameh, impure, doesn't get helped, doesn't get pushed, but potchin lo. The opportunities are opened up in front of them, but they take that step. And the Gemara brings a pasuk, Im laleitzim hu yalitz, if you want to become amongst those who are scorning, who are rejecting, hu yalitz, you can go ahead and do it. Ula anavim, if you want to be with those who are humble, those who are modest, those who are improving themselves, yitain chen, you'll be given help, you'll be given grace, you'll be given charm, you'll be given a push in that direction. That's the Gemara. Then the Gemara goes on and gives a mashal ma davar doma, a parable to what can this be compared. And the Gemara says it can be compared to a person who's got a store. And in the store he sells a parsimon, which has a wonderful fragrance, and he sells neft. What's a neft? Oil, kerosene, right? With a terrible smell. So he says a person comes to the store and asks for the parsimon, asks for some of the persimmon. He's told, wait for me, hamtein li, v'nipasem ani v'ata, I'll help you scoop it out, and that we will both get the great fragrance. If a person wants the kerosene, he'll tell him, go help yourself, you take it. Right? Third aisle on the left. Right? So that's what it is. The person wants the neft, the storekeeper helps him. The person wants the parsimon, the good smelling stuff, the storekeeper helps him. Person wants the kerosene, help it yourself. Take it yourself, help yourself. Haba l'tar, you want to become tahor, you get helped. You want to become tameh, impure, the opportunity is opened. So he asked, Ma musif mashal. What is this mashal, what is this parable adding? You don't just tell a story for the sake of telling a story. There must be something included in this story that reveals to us an aspect that we wouldn't have realized otherwise, and will answer questions we're going to have. And he explains the question that we have is, many of us, many people do good things, And we don't see them getting good for it. Right? There's even expression for that. No good deed goes unpunished. Right? Right? We often see that around us. Sadly, tragically, we see that people do good things and things are not working out for them. So he said, let's hear the mashal again. Let's hear the parable again. Person sells the aparsman, he sells the persimmon, he sells the kerosene. The person comes and asks for the aparsman. What does he tell him? Hamtein li, wait for me. And then we'll dish it out. And then I'll help you with it. The person wants the neft, go help yourself. He said the key to the parable is hamtein li. God has a long view of life, a long view of history. They say, there's a pasuk that says that 1,000 years to God is like one day. Right? There's also a pasuk that says that all the gold and silver in the world, right, is like nothing to God. Right? It's like a penny. Right? They tell a joke that a person said, God, please, give me one of your pennies. Right? And God said, sure, in a minute. Okay, anyhow, right? But God's got the long view of history. So the mashal is telling us, hamtein li, right? Wait for us. We don't see it all right away. And we see Yitro. Yitro spoke out on behalf of the Jewish people, and look what happened to him. He was banished from Egypt. And then he continues getting closer to God, rejecting all of the idolatry. And what happens? He's excommunicated. And his own daughters get chased away from the well. There's not even water for them to have. They're banished. They're excommunicated. They're derided. They're the lowest of the low. And then look what happens. Yitro comes, and who is his? He becomes the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu.
But he never converted, did he?
And he came here to convert. Right? And we have a Parsha, the Parsha of the giving of the Torah is named Parshat Yitro. Right? Which we'll come to some more things like that. Yes, Amy.
I was thinking about all of that. I mean, if he wouldn't have gotten kicked out, he wouldn't have had the blessings of getting closer to God, and that he wouldn't have maybe put the work into that. So you have to.
Yeah.
And he got a whole Parsha. I mean, So there's so many blessings in the challenges.
Yeah.
Or the go find it on aisle for yourself.
Yes. Excellent point, Amy. That's very true. Right? We've mentioned before. I think if we look back at our lives and we look back at the more difficult times we've had in our lives, we wouldn't necessarily have chosen that had the option been given to us. At the same time, I think we see that we became the people that we are mostly because of those experiences, as opposed to, the walk on the beach in Cancun. Right? That's really what made us who we are. Yes. So there's the long view of the history, there's the hamtein li, and there is the appreciate the journey along the way. Okay, why might the Torah of the Parsha of the giving of the Torah, why is that going to be attributed to Yitro? What does that teach us very clearly?
Gratitude.
Gratitude? What do you mean by gratitude, Rachel? That we're showing gratitude to him? What do you mean by gratitude?
He defended Jewish people.
Okay.
First
okay.
Of all.
So the Torah.
Eventually, his daughter married a very outstanding man.
Okay. So the Torah, God's providence is showing gratitude to him. Good.
Patience too.
Patience. Good. The hamtein li. Good. What else do we see?
Also, it relates directly to all the 613 because he was the one who said, when you sit in din, you have to make a system of judges to talk about.
Okay, good. He presented a an organized system of breaking down the rulings, good, to make it function a little more smoothly. Good, Dove?
He wasn't there to see all this stuff, yet it clicked.
Okay, that's a nice point. That's a nice point.
That's true.
He
That's
he wasn't there to witness all of it, right? Nevertheless, it clicked. It made sense to him, and he followed it. I think that's a very powerful message, right, for all of us, right? You know, we're reading about the Exodus from Egypt and Mount Sinai, and we were not there personally to experience all of it, but nevertheless, it is meant to impact us. Good. What else?
He was also an outsider, not Hebrew, and he converted.
Okay, good.
So this religion is open to people who.
Okay, beautiful. Right, even though the Torah was given to Israel, it's open for all. Chai Rivka?
In a way, I'm saying a lot of the things. He chose Judaism before there was a Torah.
No, after.
Well, it depends. There are different opinions if it was before or after Torah.
He chose before he wanted to be Jewish. He was been wanting to be Jewish all along.
I don't think he knew what he wanted to be. He just was a decent person, and he believed in one God. So do Muslims.
Well, he was then one could say that he was moving in that direction, that Judaism, everything that Judaism had, and so the giving of the Torah for the Jewish people was they all became Jewish at that point, and he was moving in that direction. He symbolized the desire of a human being to be what God wants us to be.
Yeah.
And so in
to
the
take
giving
that-
of
to
the
take
Torah
that journey. Nice.
is a mass of people, and he represents all of them in its way, in his one life.
Yeah, you know, I know for myself personally, dealing with Gerim, dealing with converts, it's very energizing, right? To see people who want what we often take for granted.
They consciously make a lot of effort.
Yeah, right? People who want what we take for granted and are willing to really turn their lives around, often upside down, often with challenges with their own families, as we could certainly understand. You know, if it was going in the other direction, we as a family would feel the same way, right? So it really is very, and this was, you know, having Yitro come and join was a very, very powerful statement. There's a very strange medrash. Right? We mention Moshe's two sons, right? Gershom and Eliezer. The medrash says that Yitro wanted to make a deal with Moshe, that you'll raise one of your children to Hashem, and I'll raise the other one for idolatry. And Moshe didn't agree. Now, what's very strange about this medrash? If we know that Yitro rejected all the idolatry, right, by the time that he had met Moshe, that's why Moshe needed to help the daughters get the water from the well. So why is he talking about raising one of the children for idolatry?
Well, the fact that Moses rejected, that sets a precedence. We don't want our children.
Right, but we're with Moshe on it. But how do we understand what Yitro wanted?
Challenge to see how deep. No, I don't know.
So
how true.
To give, Moshe raises one of his children towards the way of Hashem, so he doesn't have a choice. He's in that direction, and Yitro wanted the other one, maybe, so that he has a choice, that chooses to go towards
Nice,
Hashem.
nice,
To
nice.
go against the
Yitro looked at those who are born into it, right? And he realized something. He realized that he, having experienced everything else and coming around to Judaism, he understood that his belief was that much stronger, right? And probably he was a lot more motivated than someone who just, that's what you do, that's what you do, that's what you do. So what he wanted was to have one of the children follow in his footsteps, which can only be done if he first goes through all the avodah zarah, all the idolatry, all the other isms in the world, and then comes around to it. Because he's stronger, he's more committed. And Moshe's response was, granted that one who goes through all of that might be stronger and more committed and more motivated and more energized, but nevertheless, that's not the path that we take. That's not the path that we take. And the path needs to be the path of doing our darndest to best educate the children, to have that passion and to have that motivation and to have that dedication, but not sending them on this roundabout route, hoping that once they return, they'll be that much greater and that much stronger.
The children, they don't know what's best, what's right, what's wrong. You have to teach them right.
You have to
And
try.
then
Yeah.
You have to try.
Yeah.
You have to try.
Yeah. So Yitro comes back over here. Okay? And he converts and he goes through, right? As was mentioned, he helps Moshe structure the system, the judicial system. And then what happens? On page 400, page 401, what happens then? Verse 27, Vayishalach Moshe t'chotno vayelech lo el artso.
Jethro leaves.
He leaves.
Why? But he has family.
Why is he leaving?
But he has family there. He has other daughters.
Okay, so Rashi says, L'gayer b'nei mishpachto. He went in order, it's in the Hebrew, in the Rashi, it's 4 lines down in the right column, page 400. 4th line, Artso, L'gayer b'nei mishpachto. Rashi quotes from the Mechilta, he went to educate, to convert b'nei mishpachto, his family. And I believe the Rashiva from Chafetz Chaim, Rav Henech Leibowitz, a blessed memory, says a very beautiful point over here. Here he was, right, in a wonderful situation, surrounded by all that he had just decided to become part of. He's there in Moshe and Aaron's tent, right? He's in this spiritual wonderland. And he leaves. Why? Because he wants to help others. Now, does anyone have an obligation to convert? Certainly not. Certainly not. One of the points that I always make when someone comes to me to speak about conversion is that we don't believe that everyone needs to be Jewish. Right? Everyone, all human beings, the Mishnah says in Avot, we're all considered, we all created B'Tselem Elokim. All created in the image of God. Every human being is in the image of God. God is the God of every human being. Right? And it only makes sense if there are people all around this planet that God is the God of every member of this planet, and not every member of the planet needs to ascribe to my religion in order to have a relationship with God, in order to have eternity. To me, that whole approach that some other religions have just seems to be so illogical. That God created this entire planet with billions of people, many of whom will never even come in contact with any of those religions, and without ascribing to that religion, then it's eternal hell. I mean, it seems ludicrous to me. But one of the points that I make is you can have a relationship with God, you can have eternity, you can have the world to come, you can have paradise as a good, God-fearing Gentile. One does not need to become Jewish. If you decide you want to become Jewish, realize that you are accepting upon yourself all of the full responsibilities of being Jewish. I compare it to someone who decides to volunteer and sign up for the Marines, right? But he doesn't do push-ups, right? So it doesn't work that way, right? You don't have to sign up, but if you sign up, you're doing push-ups, right? That's how it works. And so Yitro did not have an obligation to go back to the family, and they didn't have an obligation to do anything, but nevertheless he felt this love and this want to spread that which he knew to others, right? And I think that's also a very Rav Henoch writes that that's a very important lesson for us, that certainly to take that which we know and that which we love and be sure to share it with others, those who are already Jewish, right, but who might not be aware of the treasure, of the richness of what they have, to be sure to go ahead and share that. Yes, Chayrifka and then Janet.
It might also show that once he converted, he now has a Jewish soul. And the Jewish soul is different than other types of souls.
And therefore what?
That's what he wants to give. He wants to share.
To share it. Okay.
Now, I'm not saying other religions don't give and share. They all do.
Okay.
But maybe the emphasis was on the giving now, because it is a very Jewish characteristic.
Okay.
Because Jews seem to give more in the United States. They always say they're the highest givers of charity.
But don't we actually believe that those who convert actually had a Jewish neshama to begin with?
Or had a connection beforehand, right? Or had a connection. Actually, midrashically, we say that when the Torah was offered to the nations of the world, so to speak, so the Jewish nation accepted it, the other nations didn't, but individuals did or would have, and those are the ones who, over the generations, connect and attach themselves.
What about
just one second, Janet?
So, just as we have, it says for us, go and study, so that people, these other nations, who can be God-fearing, do they have an obligation to study the Noachide laws?
An obligation, they need to know the Noachide laws. Yeah.
So is there commentaries, like when it says a system of courts for the Noachide laws, is there a commentary of what that means?
There are commentaries, yes.
And then, if this is the case, why even in Moshe's generation was there this sniping at Midian, like where, you married a Midianite wife, later on.
Well, we see by Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, they wanted to marry in the family to stay away from the idolatry.
But the point is, if this conversion did indeed take place, and Yitro was, even if he wasn't the leader anymore, he was a prominent person in Midian and spreading this, why was there this distinction? I mean, why was there this sense of, you're not really Jewish?
Again, there was no Judaism at the time that Moshe married. Right?
But I'm talking about later, after in the desert when the whole thing with Miriam...
Well, once the Torah was given, it was unclear what there are certain nations that there are restrictions on. And Midian is one of those nations. So that was the issue with David and all of that going down.
If there was
Let's not go too far.
When was it, not forbidden maybe, but it became very undesirable to
proselytize?
Yeah.
I think always.
No. Always?
Right? I don't think we ever were actively looking to convert people to Judaism.
Right.
Right? I don't think we ever were. Okay, let's jump up ahead to let's go to page 406. And some interesting ideas here. Let's start with the Aseret HaDibrot. Vayidaber Elokim, so take the verse please, Perek Chaf, chapter 20, Pasuk Aleph. Someone in Hebrew?
Vayidaber Elokim et kol ha-devarim ha'ele lemor. Ani Hashem.
Anochi?
Oh, Anochi Hashem. Elokecha asher hotzetecha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim.
Good. One more pasuk. Lo yeh lecha.
Lo yeh lecha Elokim acherim al panai.
Good. In English, please. God spoke.
God spoke all these statements, saying, I am Hashem, your God, who has taken you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. You shall not recognize the gods of others in my presence. You shall not make yourself a curved image, nor any likeness of that which is in your heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the water beneath the earth.
Beautiful. Good. So, God spoke all of these things saying. So first of all, the first of the deep word is God's introduction. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Now we look at God's resume, right? So we would say, creator of the universe is number one. And then we might, as we work our way down the line, down the list there, we'll come to the Exodus from Egypt. Why is this the Shalom Aleichem? Why is this the introduction that God gives? I am Hashem, your God, who took you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. Why is that the greeting? Linda?
Because he's speaking directly to the people who he took out.
Good.
So
good.
They can relate.
Right? So there is God, I created the universe. Okay, fair enough, maybe. Right? You say so, we'll take your word for it. As opposed to that which they experienced directly. And this is something that they gained from. And God creating the universe, we say this very often, there are two basic principles of Judaism that are, good morning, how are you? Nice to see you. That are based on our Shabbos and our Yom Tov. The two basic principles are God is the creator, and secondly, God is involved in that which goes on in this world. Shabbos is 6 days of creation, seventh day not engaging in creative activities. That is Shabbat. That is our testimony that God created the world. Yom Tov is all the events that took place with God's involvement with us throughout the generations. Therefore, God's Shalom Aleichem is not simply the creator, but that I am involved in that which goes on. I, who took you out from the land of Egypt, mi beit avadim, from the house of slavery, the house of bondage. Now, what is bayit? House, what does that make us think of? When we think of bayit, what is the message of a bayit? Family, home, individuals. Therefore, this statement is not just letting us know that I took the nation of Israel out of Egypt, which does speak of God's involvement, but that seems to indicate, or only indicates, what sort of involvement? National, large-scale involvement. God's involved in the big things. Mi beit avadim. from the house of slavery, meaning the individual houses, the individuals involved. What we call hashgacha pratit, what we call individualized providence, God's involvement in that which goes on with people on an individual basis. That is the greeting that God gave. Now, there are many different opinions, but let's go through a classic approach. Vaydaber Elokim, again, that first verse, God spoke, Et kol hadvarim ha'ela lemor. God spoke all of these things, saying, I'm sorry, page 406, 407. God spoke all of these things, saying. So therefore it seems that all of the Aseret HaDibrot were said. Okay? Were said by God. If you turn up to page 1112, very end of the Torah, the very last Parsha of the Torah, we have a very famous pasuk, verse 4. Somebody take that for us in Hebrew, please. Good. Torah, Tziva. The Torah that Moses commanded us is the heritage of the congregation of Jacob. Okay? The Torah that Moses taught us. Torah, Tziva lanu Moshe. What does Torah mean? Teachings. Okay? What is the numerical value? The Gemara Makot points out. What is the numerical value of the word Torah? So we would, if we're to venture a guess, we would say it should be 613. Right? That would work out beautifully because there are 613 mitzvot. However, Taf is 400, Vav is 6, Reish is 200, Hey is 5. So it's 611, not 613. The Gemara explains exactly. Torah Tziva lanu Moshe. Moshe commanded us Torah. How much did Moshe command us? 611. How about the other two? Those were not commanded to us by Moshe. The first two Dibrot, we heard those directly from God. So God gave us his introduction. I am Hashem, your God. You shall not have any other gods. That is the two. Those are the two that we heard from God. Moshe then explained and taught all the others, the next 8 commandments, and the rest of the Torah, the other 603 mitzvot of the Torah. So Torah Tziva. So is it Vaydaber Elokim et kol dvarim ha'ela lemor, God spoke all these statements? Or did God speak the first 2? So God spoke all, and actually Rashi brings the medrash that God said all of these statements b'dibur echad. What's b'dibur echad? One time. Simultaneously. All were said. Then it was broken down and explained. God said the first 2, and we heard that. And then it was overwhelming for us to have this level of revelation. We backed off, and Moshe then transmitted the other 8 to us.
And the first to I'm your God, is it just a commandment, I'm your God? And you have no other gods besides me. Isn't it the same thing?
Okay.
One and the same thing.
So you're touching on 2 points, right? I am Hashem your God, right, is the positive. Don't have any other gods is the flip side of that. Meaning, right, in certain societies, this is the wife, and there might be other wives. right? In other words, there could be a sharing of allegiance, okay? Right? But, right, you are raising an interesting point. We translate this as the Ten Commandments, right? Ten Commandments is a poor translation. A dibra is not a commandment.
What is dibra?
Dibra is a statement, right? So right, and the first one is, at least at first glance, it's hardly a commandment, right? Right? We understand it as a commandment of faith and allegiance, but it's hardly a commandment. It's more of a statement. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So we have now, if God is going to break it down, then why would he first have this first command, this dibur echad? Why would it be said all at once? What's the point? We can't understand it. We didn't understand it. What's the point in all at once if anyhow it's going to need to be broken down?
Because if we're accepting it, we're accepting the entire thing before we know all the details.
Unconditional.
Okay, good. We have this concept of nasev and nishma, right? That we said we will do, and then we will hear, right?
Like Obamacare, right?
I don't know if I want to go there. Okay, right?
Sorry.
Right? I don't like to get political, right?
Did you say Obama's scared?
But just the fact that he himself said something, it was such an impressive thing.
Correct, but he's going to spell it out though as it goes along. So you want to say that it speaks of the totality. Again, how did you word that?
It's so good.
Take a second.
How did you word that?
He took it on
Oh,
face
you're talking
value.
to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you want to know?
You worded it very well.
Well,
No, before we got to Obamacare.
well, Lahav deal, first of all, sorry about that.
So how did you word it?
I said that before we get into the details, we're just going to accept the whole thing.
Okay, good.
And then
Right.
look into what it is.
Okay.
Without bargaining.
Right,
Without
right.
bargaining.
We understand. The nasev and nishma is I will do it, then I'll hear. The example I like to give, right? If someone that you don't trust says, can you do me a favor? Mm-hmm. Your response is,
Okay.
what would you like?
Yes.
Right? What would you like? Right? Hopefully when our spouse says, can you do something for me? The answer is yes. What would you like? Right? And there's a very big difference between the two. When there's trust, then we could say yes. What would you like? When there's not trust, we say, what would you like? And then we decide about the yes. There's nishma v'naseh. Well, I'll hear and then I'll do. And there's I'll do and then I will hear. So we needed to know that we were coming into this with a naseh v'nishma attitude. That anything and everything that God will ask of us is only for our benefit. Even though as we began, we might not see that immediately, but it is for our benefit. We do the right thing, we gain from that. A story I've shared before. My first years here, there was a graduate student who was here, who was in a certain program with a certain professor, and was tempted to jump to a different professor who seemed to have a better program and a better name, and it would be a better chance for him to really succeed professionally if he would be under the program of this other professor. However, the first professor really helped him out tremendously. He was an Israeli young man. He helped him get here, and he really got him on his feet, and he felt a certain degree of gratitude and obligation to help out, to not leave this other professor, especially because this other professor, the new one, was a real maverick and was attracting a lot of people, and his leaving that first professor just might completely torpedo that whole project, because many people were leaving, and it would be etu brute. He also goes, right? So he asked me, what should I do? Right? I have my debt of gratitude to this fellow. At the same time, professionally, I think I'll do much better if I jump ships. And I said to him that gratitude and showing gratitude to someone is one of the fundamental concepts of the Torah. To the point, that's one of the explanations of Bereshit. The Torah was created for Reshit, and one of the things that's called Reshit is the first fruits, thanksgiving gift that we bring to the Beit HaMikdash. So the world was created because of this concept of Hakarat HaTov. And I said to him very clearly, I said, and understand what I'm saying to you now. You will not lose out by doing the right thing. And if staying with this first professor is the right thing, you will not lose out. Does that mean you'll get a better job? I can't tell you that. Does that mean you'll get as good a job? I can't tell you that. Might you get a worse job? Yes, that's a possibility. Might you be financially disadvantaged for the rest of your life as a result of this decision that you made? Perhaps. But you won't lose out. In the overall scheme, when you will look back on this, either from this world or the next world, you will say, I gained from this decision. But it's hamtainly. We don't see things like Yitro. He made all that effort. We don't see things right away. But you will not lose out by making the right decision, and then do whatever you want to do. And I'm not going to follow up on this and say, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Right? I understand it's a difficult decision. You asked for my take on it. That's my take on it. It just so happens that this guy ended up staying. And whenever he sees me now, he no longer lives in Irvine, he thanks me. And he said that was the best decision he ever made professionally and financially. This other guy was like a rising star who shot up and then shot down. And he did much better professionally and financially by staying, right, by staying with the first program. But that is certainly an understanding in it all being presented as one. It's echad. It's one big package deal. And Judaism is not a smorgasbord religion that I'll have two of that, but that upsets my stomach. Right? We need to understand that this is b'dibur echad. This is all one. Yes, Jen?
And also maybe at a lower level than Cheryl was saying, that's maybe where the sages get the sort of viewpoint, the perspective that to do each mitzvah is equally important, you know.
Correct. Good.
Since it was all given at
yes.
one.
Yes. Now, there's a beautiful medrash that speaks about the letters. The letters taking on a life and will and wants and approaching God. The Torah begins, first word of the Torah is Bereshit. The first letter is Bet. Right? Now you would think that the Torah would start with Aleph.
It does. God
right?
is Aleph.
I'm sorry?
I said it does. God is Aleph.
God is Aleph. That's what it is.
When you say God is Aleph.
Well, the opening of the sides of the Aleph and everything is supposed to represent God, no? Was my understanding.
Well, I'm saying the first letter of the Torah is a Bet,
Right.
not an Aleph.
No, but what I'm saying is that God is the Aleph, and then we start with the Bet.
Okay, but the Torah, so Linda's getting midrashic over here. Okay, but on a simple level, we would imagine that the Torah would start with the Aleph if it is the beginning. So Linda wants to say that no, it's not the beginning. It's that which comes from God, and therefore it starts with the Bet. Okay, so Bet is 2, right? Bet is already the splitting apart. Okay? And with the more splitting apart that there is, the more difficult it is to recognize that there is this echad, this dibor echad, there is this unity, there is this oneness that this world actually is. That it is this godliness that is everywhere, and that's what it all is. That this world to a certain degree is an illusion. It is a mask. It is an obfuscation. It is a covering over of God's presence, and we are meant to see through that and to make the connection. The Aseret HaDibrot, the speaking on Mount Sinai, was meant to take all of this disparity, all of this breaking apart, all of these different components, and let us know that it is all one. It is all that echad. That's why, even though the Torah begins with Beth, because the world is this hiddenness of God, this illusion of being more than one, the Aseret HaDibrot starts with Anochi. Right? That is the Aleph. Now, Aleph is a fascinating letter. The way that we... I have a pen for a moment. Thanks. In Aleph, this is how an Aleph is made. Okay? An Aleph is a Vav and two Yuds.
And where's Vav?
A Vav, the letter Vav, and Yud, Yud. Now the letter Vav is an interesting letter. Okay? First of all, what is a Vav in Hebrew? A Vav is a hook, right? That which you attach something to. Now, the letter Vav is known as Vav HaChibur. Vav normally is it's the and. It's the letter that connects. So you have a Vav, and you have a Yud above it, and a Yud beneath it. Right? The Yud is the world that is above, the world that is beneath, and the Vav is that what connects it. So the Aleph, godliness, is meant to connect that which is above, that which is beneath. Now, what is the numerical value of Aleph? 1. Okay. And I pointed out before, if you spell out the word for the letter Aleph, Aleph, Lamed, Fei, that's Aleph is 1, Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, Fei is 80. What do you have? 1, 1, 1. You have 111. 80 and 30 and 1. Right? Now, if we take the Aleph, which is a Vav and 2 Yuds, what is the numerical value of that? Right? 2 Yuds is 10 plus 10. Vav is 6. You have 26. What is 26? 26, first of all, is the right Why are Sephardic shuls usually nicer than Ashkenazic shuls? Because we give multiples of 18. Chai, of 18. They give multiples of 26. Now it all makes sense. Why 26? Because God's name, the Yud, Hey, followed by the Vav and the Hey, is 26. Yud is 10, 2 Heys is 2 5s, another 10, Vav is 6. So Aleph actually is the gematria of 26. What else is 26? How many letters are there in the alphabet? 22, but 26. Why? Aleph, Bet, Vet. Gimel, Dalid, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Chaf, Kaf. Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samech, Ayin, Pei, Fei. Tzadi, Kuf, Reish, Shin, Sin, Taf. Okay? So we actually have 26. So the Aleph contains all. So granted, the world starts with Beth, because the world is this diffusion, this pizur. It is this spreading out of this unity. The point of the Aseret HaDibrot, they were all said at once. And the point of the Aseret HaDibrot, starting with the Aleph, is to bring it all back to that central point. As we say later on in the Torah, to the point of Ein Od Milvado, which I think we discussed either last week or 2 weeks ago. We mentioned that idea. That Ein Od Milvado. That this is the world of God. This is the world of God that we are in, and it is for us to do the best that we can during the time that is allotted, that is granted, that is gifted to us to be here. And we do the best that we can, and we will not always see the results, as we began with Yitro and the Gemara. It's a Gemara in Sukkah or Yuma, the Gemara of the Hamtein Li, but ultimately, it all comes together, and that's our belief, because we don't always get to see that. We don't always get to see that, but that is our belief, and that is what the Torah is teaching us throughout. Okay, my friends, we will call it over here.
What does 26 mean? Chai is 18 is life, but what does
So Chai is the numerical value of life.
And
26 is the numerical value of God's name. That's what it is. Welcome. So you live around here? Nice. Good. Again, your first name, I'm sorry?
Julia.
Julia.
You know what? Pirkei Avot is the subject of study.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to study. A wonderful thing to study.
Or is it too much already?
There are wonderful books in English.
In English.
Yeah.
What edition is the best one? I used to have a thick book like that. So
The Art Scroll. The Art Scroll. Elizabeth,
do we have
turn it off. Thank you.
Do we have an Art Scroll edition?
We might have over here. Yeah.
But it's not difficult. It's very ethics. It's not that difficult, ethics.
There's a lot of depth.